this building really questions what a skyscraper is. Because on the one hand, it's undoubtedly a tall building at around 245 meters tall. On the other hand, as a firm that is currently working on projects that are 600-700 meters tall around the world, it's really kind of a runt of the litter, let's say, in that regard. But you can think of it as a skyscraper. You can think of it as a sort of landscraper, being that it is around 450 to 600 meters tall, 450 sort of end to end of the tower, 600 if you include the podium. But it also can be thought of as 6 buildings, because at each of the cores, 3 for the residential and 3 for the hotel, gives you a completely unique and separate experience. So on the one hand, you can think of it as 6 towers in a complex. You can think of it as 1 horizontal building, or you can think of it as a skyscraper. And the idea that it kind of operates in between all of those readings is kind of exciting for us. The original brief from the client was to try to create something that was the most iconic building in Dubai as part of their attempts to create a new residence and hotel concept in preparation for the Dubai 2020 Expo. When we started to approach the design, we realized pretty quickly that coming up with an iconic form in a city like Dubai was virtually impossible. If there's a form that one can create or imagine, it's either already built in Dubai or currently under construction. So we decided to take a little bit of a different tact, which is focus on creating an iconic set of experiences, something that's very unique and very different, not only within Dubai, but in the world. So we started with a relatively simple concept, which is the idea of a double-loaded hotel and residential slab. And we then pulled all the pieces apart to create a series of apertures we call sky courts, and a series of cantilever terraces that we call sky terraces. On the hotel side, each of the terraces are divided into 4, and that allows all the hotel suites to have access to these rather large covered shaded terraces. And on the residential side, it means that all the duplex apartments and all the special penthouse units have these terraces. Each of the apertures is around 22 meters deep, wide, and tall, so a kind of nice proportion of space, around 5 or 6 floors each. And depending on the number of units, they're divided either singularly or up into 4 pieces. Because there are units located below each of these sky courts, it means the pools and other landscape elements have to be built up. Which means you can have the sort of surreal experience of being able to swim underwater in an acrylic-fronted building, in an acrylic-fronted pool with a view 40 stories over the city of Dubai. And if you really think about that sort of mix of indoor-outdoor living that we normally associate with sort of low-rise modern houses in places like Los Angeles, California, or Mexico City, there really isn't another place in the world you'd have that kind of experience stacked up into a building 45 stories high. This is a fairly large project. We're talking something in excess of 300,000 square meters, almost about 330,000 square meters. But by breaking it down into these discrete sort of 4 or 5-story blocks, you have all of the benefits of a large mixed-use complex, the kind of restaurants and amenities and services you'd expect from a much larger complex. But instead of coming out of an elevator to sort of infinitely long corridors with 25 or 30 apartments or hundreds of hotel rooms, you'll come out of an elevator core for the residential side and have only 3 or 4 units on your floor. And you'll come out on the hotel side and only have 10, 12, maybe 16 hotel rooms, which gives us a much more intimate and bespoke experience. The other thing is that breakdown of scale vertically comes down to the ground as a series of smaller podium elements. So on the residential side, it's a series of townhomes with private gardens, which are still integrated into the building but kind of break down the scale as you approach the ground. And on the hotel side, it's a sort of village of elements, restaurants, shops, convention amenities that give it a sort of urbanistic scale, which is important because what sets apart this kind of lifestyle is that it's not purely resort, it's really urban resort living, which combines the sort of best aspects of world-class cities, of which Dubai certainly is one, with also the aspects of sort of beachfront resort living, which are fundamentally different than living in dense cities. Buildings should provide a certain kind of texture, and glass is not really conducive to that. Creating buildings out of flat glass is, first of all, environmentally not sustainable. And second of all, it sort of means that the buildings are devoid of any kind of visual interest or beauty that we can enjoy. So I think the reason that a lot of people tend to like older architecture isn't uniquely just the style or the form of it, but the fact that the use of materials, whether it's brick in England or plaster in Italy or stone throughout the Middle East, creates a sense of visual delight. It doesn't matter sort of what it's shaped into, it's the fact that you have something for your eyes to rest on. So we went through very great efforts on this project to create a lot of depth, both materialistically and also visually. And of course, one of the benefits of that is that all of these devices also create shade. So there's a lot of glass in the project, and obviously there's very tall windows where you have unencumbered views, but because of the depth of the shading elements and the different sort of vertical and horizontal facade elements that define the building, the glass does not necessarily get direct light. And so as a result, we can go for much clearer, lower reflectivity glass than is typical of buildings of this type throughout Dubai.